All right, so welcome back. Let's continue here now. The Judge President of the Gauteng Division of the High Court, Dunstan Mlambo, has raised concerns over the public's loss of confidence in the judiciary. The Judicial Service Commission is interviewing its third candidate for the position of South Africa's Chief Justice. Mlambo is among 4 candidates competing for the Constitutional Court's top job. Now, for more on the story, let's cross live now to SABC News reporter Hasina Gori. Hasina, thank you so much for your time. Now, very tense and interesting and very long day for Judge Mlambo. In fact, I was giving my wrap earlier on, of course. Questions of members of the JSC, asking Judge Mlambo about sexual harassment rumors, even though we know there has not been any formal complaint. In fact, he was asked if he knew that he was going to be asked that question today of the sexual harassment rumor, of which he responded he was given no prior notice. Now, a very tense day in parts for the Judge President. Talk to me about your analysis of today's proceedings.
Good afternoon, Anati. Yes, as you mentioned, quite a tense day this morning. We've seen a very different style of interview questions that we've seen with the last 2 candidates. Also, just before this break, which we had because of scheduled load shedding, which is about to set in sometime now. So they've taken that 30-minute break to allow for load shedding to pass through. But a very tense moment, or heated moment at that point, when Advocate Mpofu, which is one of the commissioners, was asking those questions to the Judge President, trying to pose to him on whether or not he was aware of the rumors that were brought against him, asked about the rumors of corruption as well as various other allegations, and whether or not he was aware of this prior to this interview here. And as he was responding, there was a interruption by the AFF leader, also one of the commissioners, Julius Malema, really calling out what he says was comments from the media panel who were also sitting in the proceedings. And you saw there the Deputy Judge President really saying that he will note this and deal with it appropriately. So that was just those moments before we went for this tea break. I want to bring in Advocate Thabo with me and get his sense of what he thought of the proceedings thus far. We've seen a very different style from what we saw with the last 2, different kind of questions. Today, a lot on political or undercurrent of political bias, as well as these allegations or rumors of the sexual harassment. What's your sense so far of these interviews?
The line of questioning is unfortunate, and it robs the country of an opportunity to understand the capabilities of the candidate on at least 3 things. On his jurisprudence, already know he has, or on whether he's got the necessary administrative capabilities and the leadership astuteness to be able to take charge of the OCJ office. Of course, where you have members of parliament and representatives of political parties in these processes, you are more likely to see this mud-swiddling. It's quite unfortunate, and there's an already established protocol and procedure of how to lodge complaints of misconduct. Because I want to believe any allegation of sexual harassment or GBV, even corruption to that extent, borders on misconduct. And the JSC has got an outlined procedure on how to record and deal with written complaints. I was surprised that the chairperson allows this line of questioning to degenerate to the level it has, especially that the candidate has already indicated that he was aware of the rumors, but he's not aware of a written formal complaint, because it can only get to this level and extent only if it has been put in writing by a complainant who raises her hand and say, I've got the following circumstantial or specific evidence to back up my claim. So far there is none. It's all rumor mongering, and you can't just disqualify a potential candidate solely and only on the basis of a unwritten, non-existing complaint that is based on rumor. It's quite unfortunate.
The Judge President did respond to that rumor, saying that he felt that it was just brought out to discredit him. And I want to talk on the JSC policies. When it comes to these candidates, we know that the gloves come off during these interviews, irrespective of which court you are applying for as a judge. You find that these questions do get personal. But what policies are in place to ensure that rumors are just not peddled and brought forward and asked as facts?
Look, I've been one of the voices that has recently provoked the debate on whether we shouldn't really rethink the procedure and mannerism in interviewing and or shortlisting a jurist to the highest office. Because, quite frankly, and for all intents and purposes, if the procedure is going to continue in the manner that it does, you are more likely to see political mudslinging taking center stage instead of focusing on the capabilities of an individual to occupy that office to which they are being interviewed. Because remember, the fact that these proceedings are public invite the members of the public of an indulgence to be able to assess whether or not the people who are contesting for the office are capable in law, administratively, and in terms of leadership. So there may be a case in reconsidering the mannerism and the approach in dealing with these interviews. Like the candidate said, he was not aware of the fact that these questions will be brought before him. And I think for all intents and purposes, and in all fairness, it's unfair on him to be spending at least 30 minutes, I can count, that has been spent in deliberating on non-existing complaint. He says there was a process by a retired judge to try to facilitate the discussion, but perhaps, in all fairness to the JSC, notwithstanding the fact that this shouldn't be entertained because it's not being properly complained upon, perhaps there could be an issue or a debate to think about seriously whether is the situation or the circumstances, the conditions conducive enough in the judiciary to allow for an enabling environment for female and women aspirant judges to be able to raise issues of sexual misconduct whatsoever without feeling victimized. Perhaps, and as Judge President Meyer indicated yesterday, the absence of a sexual harassment policy and many other, domesticated policies is a matter of concern in the judiciary, because to a large extent the judiciary has operated as if it's in an island. It does not exist within a context of a South African situation where GBVs, corruption and all other forms of misconduct are a misnomer and are prevalent in dealing with the affairs of citizens. Perhaps this is just a blessing in disguise that is coming up to start to provoke the real issue on whether or not we should not be thinking about dealing with these issues more substantively.
And my last question is, the Freedom Under Law brought about some complaints on some of the commissioners saying that they feel they should not be a part of the process. Ironically, these are the two commissioners, or one of the two commissioners, that have raised some of these rumors and allegations today. Your response, do you feel that the commissioners should be re-looked at?
I think remember, you can't dictate to political parties on who they recommend to be part of which committee. And this is part of the Justice Clasher Committee, and those MPs or commissioners may have been nominated by their respective organizations, but it looks like there's more than what meets the eye here. And if you look at what the Freedom Under Law's attempt to remove them, and the fact that the very same commissioners are the one who are consistently pestering on the matter, one has reason to think that there's more than what meets the eye. But I still insist that from a candidature point of view, from a contestation point of view, I think the mannerism of bringing these allegations and these rumors is a bit unfair to the candidature of Judge President Mlambo.
Thank you so much. That was Advocate Thabo speaking to us here as we on a tea break from the third day of these interviews, really responding to his kind of feelings and sentiments around the questioning that we saw coming out today with regards to the Judge President Mlambo. facing these questions of allegations of sexual harassment. What we've heard so far is that he was not briefed ahead of these interviews. These were rumors that and have not been any substantial written reports when it comes to this. This is quite a sensitive issue in a country where gender-based violence is quite rife. So as one would expect, it was brought, but questions around whether or not this was the right forum or the right manner in which to bring it in right now. But I want to bring in the legal expert as well. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with where I just departed from on the sexual harassment allegations and rumors that were posed to Judge Mlambo. Is this the right forum or the right manner for it to be posed when there wasn't any written reports or any misconduct reports written?
I mean, I think it's a problem. The JSC's past practice in this respect has been a little bit inconsistent. But as you'd have heard the Judge President speak about towards the end of the session, it seems to be a generally understood practice that there will be some sort of prior warning or prior notification. I think the real problem here is that there's a tremendous lack of detail about the complaint. So I think it's extremely difficult for someone faced with those allegations to properly respond to it. And the danger is very much that, you know, the mud still sticks, to coin the phrase, and that still casts something of a doubt, even though there's not really any basis to determine whether or not the allegations are valid. So, as to whether this is the right forum, look, I think if they are established grounds to cast a doubt on someone's suitability, this would be one such ground. So it would be appropriate to investigate that and to explore that. The danger is with doing it this way, if your basis is only on a rumor that's out there, that just becomes too easy to, a judge that somebody doesn't want in a position can be frankly smeared too easily if that is the bar. So I think the incident really points to a deeper problem with the JSC's processes, that these things are not regulated and established and agreed on by the commissioners before the interview. I think it's a tremendous problem to be having these debates about what to do with these allegations while the interview of the candidate is going on. That's really not the ideal way to be dealing with the issue.
So with the Judge President Mlambo, really his response was literally saying these are rumors, and it felt like it was a smear campaign. And you're talking around processes, and it's a question we've posed to the JSC quite a number of times on guidelines, as well as also what are they looking for specifically for a Chief Justice, because that will guide you then into the way that we question. So let's talk on some of the concerns that were raised around the commissioners. We know two of them, Freedom Under Law, really saying that they feel they should recuse themselves. Thoughts on that process, especially ironically that they are the two that are raising some of these concerns today again?
Yeah, there is certainly an irony in that. I think that it's a similar concern, really, with that. The problem is that there's not any formal process in terms of how the JSC operates that deals with the question of what standard to apply as to whether or not a commissioner should recuse themselves. So again, one's left having an ad hoc debate without any real guidance, short of the process actually being taken on review to the courts and a finding being made on that. But I don't think anybody has the appetite, after we've waited so long for the appointment of a new Chief Justice, to start running off to court and overturning this process. So yeah, I mean, I think the argument can certainly be made, as Freedom Under Law have made it. But I'm not surprised that we're in a situation where the commissioners are still sitting, because there's not a clear basis on which to make a determination that, yes, JSC commissioners shouldn't sit in these circumstances or on these grounds. So we've been hearing talk about the JSC is going to have a workshop to discuss some internal workings, and I think it's become really apparent, especially today, that it's very important that they do that, and that is one of the issues that they will hopefully address.
We're in day 3 of these interviews. This is the third candidate. We've seen different styles, throughout the week, and today we see a very different, inconsistent to the more collegial, interviews we saw in the last 2 days. My question around is, are we seeing this because because there are more complaints or concerns around the specific candidate, or is it an issue of gender being brought in, where we saw yesterday was almost a conversation going on? Are we seeing this disparity, and is it an unfair bias to the candidates?
I suspect what we're seeing is politics coming into the process to the extent that we didn't see with the first two candidates. And I think we're going to see it again tomorrow. It may be even more pronounced tomorrow. I think what's underlying a lot of what's going on today is the fact that we've heard the discussion of the cases that have been considered in the Gauteng High Court, the so-called state capture-related cases. So many of those have been decided in Judge President Mlambo's court. So I think it was always expected that there was going to be some debate, shall we say, about that issue. And obviously, with tomorrow's interview of Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, the Zondo Commission and everything around that is going to be very pronounced. So I think to a certain extent this was an expected variation because the candidates' backgrounds are different. I do think one can still ask some questions about possible unfairness. There were still some questions that were asked about particular judgments and particular approaches that were not put to the other candidates. I've seen worse from the JSC on that score. I must say this has some of the inconsistency I think is explicable by the particular background of the candidates. It's inconsistency has been a long-standing concern in these processes, that's for sure.
And just before I let you go, what can we expect, going into the last end of this today? More of the kind of questioning we saw throughout the day, or do you feel that they'll move into more his leadership or into his administrative kind of qualities, which we haven't heard him really speak on except for in his vision?
So I think the candidates discussing their vision has been an interesting dynamic, and I think we saw that yesterday with President Maya as well, that to a certain extent they've been able to head off quite a lot of questions by setting out a very comprehensive vision. My suspicion is that with Judge President Mlambo, a lot of that is going to be taken as read. He is very highly regarded in the judiciary as a top administrator. So I would suspect that we're going to have a lot of further follow-ups and further revisiting of what we've heard already. It would be nice if we change topics and go into some more deeper substantive questions, but I think we're going to have a rehashing of quite a lot of what's come already, unfortunately.
And finally, we know the Chief Justice position is quite an important one, heads the judiciary as well as the most senior judge on the Constitutional Court, the person or the entity that enshrines and ensures our Constitution is held. How important is it to ensure that that person is not someone who can be swayed by politics and has an independence, or is it more of a cordial relationship that works alongside each other?
I think both, to be quite honest. I think they're both very important. I think we've seen the amount of sort of criticism in the political kind of space that the judiciary comes in for. I think a Chief Justice has to be thick-skinned and has to be a strong character, but at the same time has to be collegial in terms of their relationships with colleagues and with other sectors in government and in society. So they really have to be both, to be honest, and that is part of what makes it such a challenging job, is the person in that position has to be so many things at once.
Thank you so much. That was legal analyst Chris speaking to us here at the JSC interviews. We are on day 3. We are currently on a break, which is about to end. Here, quite a lot to unpack today regarding the questioning that the Gauteng Judge President Mlambo has been prescribed to. We heard these allegations and rumors being put to him with regards to sexual harassment. The context we're getting from the analyst saying this is not the policy of the JSC when it comes to interviews, that someone has to be informed that there will be questions regarding this. We heard Mlambo just conceding before the break, saying that he had heard about the rumors, but there's been no written reports. There was no misconduct. There's been no further information regarding that. We heard from both the analysts we spoke to saying that it's quite unfair, and it's a smear campaign of sort and politicking, which was expected, from a lot of the analysts we're speaking on, saying that this was expected, giving him Mlambo's long career. He has been a veteran. He's been at the helm of the Gauteng High Court for almost a decade, precisely presiding over a lot of cases, specifically around the state capture. One of the complaints that had come in against him is from the public protector, and it was in regards to a meeting which she said was never given to her when it came to certain judgment from the letter that she wrote to the JSC against the appointment of Mlambos. She said that his inability to have that meeting with her shows that he cannot be someone that has this leadership skills to run the Chief Justice Office. So these are just some of the questions that were posed to him, as well as the complaints and the concerns. We are going to go back to that proceedings in a little bit. As always, you can follow it on all the SABC platforms as well as digitally. But for now, let's go back to that proceedings.
All right, Hasina, thank you so much. Before you go, I know that the proceedings haven't started, but I know that they are about to start. But I just want you to just touch a little bit on what you had said in your introduction. You know, one of the members basically being very tough towards the members of the media too. I mean, not only Judge Mlambo, it would seem, was facing a tough line of questioning. What was that altercation about in terms of what was said in the interview room?
So what we understand took place was Commissioner Advocate Dalimpofu was asking a question to Mlambo, and he was interjected by first one of the commissioners asking if this was with regards to what she said. And out of nowhere, we hear an interjection by Commissioner Malema, basically calling out the media, saying that every time that things are being said, that there's murmurs going on, and used a racial slur at some point. And we heard the deputy SA, or the chair of this proceeding, saying that he will note it. I have not had a chance to further find out what happened after that, or whether or not they've engaged with the media at this point. But we will try and get more information regarding this. But this is not the first time we've heard Malema, speak out during these proceedings. Yesterday, when Justice Maya was speaking, there was some clapping and cheering from, it seems, some of the colleagues that were sitting on both sides, so either the media as well as the legal groups, the advocacy groups that are here and present at the proceedings. And you heard Malema saying that this was not a renter crowd, and that applause and comments should not be part of the proceedings. So this is just what we've seen take place over the last 2 days, not just today, when it comes to Commissioner Malema and the public that are part of this proceedings.
Well, hang in there as we have 3 minutes to go before those, proceedings begin. But thank you so much, Hasina, for your time and that analysis. We'll definitely be going back to those proceedings as soon as they begin.